ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. Please stand on your feet so that we can open with a quick word of prayer. Father, we thank you for bringing us here safely for a time like this where we could share knowledge and share each other's company. We pray that everything that is spoken about this afternoon that will be beneficial to those that hear it. Give us the wisdom to understand and the courage to ask questions. In Jesus' name, amen.
Honorable Minister of Infrastructure, Mr. Hayden Hughes. Honorable Minister of Education, Ms. Deanne Kentish-Rogers. Permanent Secretary, Education, Dr. Bonnie Richardson-Lake. Chief Statistician, Education Services Planner, our consultant for this project, President of the Anguilla Community College, Dr. Williams, heads of department and heads of unit, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It is my honor to welcome all of you to this Anguilla Labour Market Survey Sensitization session. We thank you for taking the time to be with us this afternoon to learn more about this survey, its rationale, importance, and your role as key stakeholders in ensuring its success. To say that this is long overdue would be an understatement. For many years, the Anguilla Statistics Department in the Ministry of Economic Development has been lobbying for the conduct of a labor market and labor force survey. The department was supported in its advocacy by the Education Planning Unit in the Ministry of Education, which saw the conduct of the survey as a means of obtaining critical data to assist in education planning. With the financial support of the European Union through the European Development Fund, we are finally able to make this a reality. We express our deepest gratitude to the European Union, especially the delegation to Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean, for their continued support and guidance. The first of the surveys to be rolled out is the Anguilla Labour Market Survey. This will examine labor supply and demand. From an education standpoint, this data is critical in ensuring that the education sector is producing or supplying what the market demands. It will demonstrate whether the training being provided by education institutions is relevant for the labor market, whether the right skills are being developed to meet the needs of various industries, and whether there's a need to shift focus, and if so, in what direction. I'm sure that you can also easily see why this is important for business owners and other organizations. Think of how much more efficient and productive your business or organization can be if there's a ready pool of persons with the skills that you need to choose from. When there's a skills mismatch between labor supply, that is what is being produced, and labor demand, what is needed, the economy suffers. The Ministry of Economic Development is therefore a vested partner in this work. While the economy continues to feel the impact of various shocks, it is even more important that we have the kind of data that will assist in making decisions about mitigating potential economic threats and propelling economic recovery. Additionally, it is worth noting that the support being provided by the European Union involves capacity building, so that our very own Department of Statistics, on which we rely in calculating various economic indicators, will be empowered to conduct the survey on its own going forward. This survey is central to government's ability to make meaningful plans for Anguilla's development. It will ensure that we are channeling our energies and our scarce resources in the right areas, and over time will result in you as business persons having access to the skills you need to get the job done. We look forward to your attentiveness and your engagement this afternoon, and to your willing participation in the rollout of the survey. Please assist us in spreading the word and getting others involved. All of us stand to benefit from this initiative. We look forward to a productive afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone. My remarks this afternoon are going to be very brief. Welcome to the Sensitization session for the Anguilla Labour Market survey. Many of you may be wondering, what does the Ministry and Department of Education have to do with the labor market survey? But the able PS might have already alluded to its impact. And the answer is everything. The labor market's demand for trained and skilled workers is supplied to a large extent by Anguilla's education system. To ensure that the skills and capacities needed by the labor market are delivered, the education system in turn has to respond. This first labor market survey is a step into the right direction for data-driven decision-making for the Ministry and Department of Education to satisfy the labor market's real needs, assess gaps in skills, and address them through changes in the curriculum. It is therefore critically important that this data is collected, analyzed, and used to build improved capacity in our education system from the primary school level through to the tertiary level institutions. The Ministry and Department of Education are therefore happy to endorse and to support this labor market survey through our education planning unit. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Allow me to adopt the protocol that has already been established. My task this afternoon is to share a little bit about the context of this afternoon's exercise. The world as we know it is rapidly changing, and so too are the needs of its populace. We in education must therefore remain relevant and dynamic, adjusting to the changing needs of our communities. Job requirements are changing rapidly, and so too are individuals changing their skills set, either through education and training or through their work and life experience. Education and training systems in particular have a key role to play in ensuring that opportunities are provided for all individuals to continually develop their skills from a lifelong learning perspective. This enables them to adapt to rapidly changing labor market requirements and conditions. Given the complexity and dynamics of the process, perfect matching between skills demand and supply is neither feasible nor necessary, given that there are many drivers to change. In our context, these may include demographic factors, technological innovation, climate change, or transforming to a greening economy. Obviously, we have no crystal ball to see into the future. However, it is important for policymakers to be aware of the importance of reducing the risk of creating large skills gaps that undermine the employability of individuals and impede the productivity of enterprises and the growth of economies. International experience suggests that a comprehensive labor market information system is the backbone of any education and employment strategy. With this premise in mind, in 2014, I spent some time in Turin, Italy at the International Labour Organization Training Center, undergoing a program of study in skills needs anticipation and matching. This program highlighted the central importance of identifying current and anticipated future skills needs, generally, and particularly within the Anguillan context. The objectives of that course were, 1, to acquire a good understanding of the drivers of change which impact the demands for skills and the reasons for labor market imbalances and their consequences. And two, to understand the underlying principles of and the different approaches to skills needs anticipation. What was obvious coming out of an evaluation of the Anguillan context following that training was, one, the need for a national development strategy, and two, that in the absence of a labor market and labor force survey and the information that these provide, our hands were tied as we were working in a vacuum from an uninformed position. The opportunity to conduct a labor market and labor force survey, however, came later under the 11th EDF program provided by the European Union, as mentioned by Permanent Secretary for Economic Development. The 11th EDF Education and Training Sector Policy Support Program, which supports the Ministry of Education in the implementation of its strategic objectives under the Education Development Plan 2015 to 2020, and promotes the achievement of different results areas. These include, but are not limited to, improvements in strategic management, administration, coordination, and articulation of education and training in Anguilla. The key objective of the technical assistance provision in this instance is to support the Ministry of Education and other ministries and departments of the government of Anguilla in effective planning, monitoring, and evaluation. This will be done through the use of evidence-based policymaking with the conduct of a labor market and force survey, while capacity building of the Anguilla Statistics Department to continue the production of labor-related data in Anguilla. The labor market survey is simply the first aspect to be implemented. The use of labor market information requires the appropriate infrastructure for collection, analysis, and dissemination of data, as well as trained and experienced analysts in this area. This consultancy is another step in the process of capacity building towards ensuring that a skills needs and anticipation system exists in Anguilla. Such capacity building should include improvements to the statistical infrastructure, training of analysts and other staff in the relevant institutions, and building the trust of respondents and data users through data protection regulations such as that found in the Statistics Act. In addition, quite recently, 5 persons, namely the chief statistician, the statistician in the economics statistics section, the statistics assistant in the demographic and social statistics section, the TVET coordinator, and myself, education services planner, undertook a program of study via e-learning mode in skills anticipation and matching, again with the ILO International Training Center. All 5 of us successfully completed this certified course. This ensures that we are able to progress to the next stage in the development of a skills needs anticipation system following the completion of the labor market survey. We have long awaited this, as skills needs analysis and anticipation will inform what needs to be done in skills development policy, in curriculum design, in the development of competency standards, in curriculum counseling, and in technical and vocational guidance. This therefore facilitates skills development and provides human resource capacity that Anguilla needs. The education sector, however, is but one side of the equation, the supply side in skills development. Skills development is a broad concept comprising of 3 pillars: initial TVET provisions and the universities, active labor market policy, and workplace learning. Hence, there are many stakeholders and persons involved. These include young people between the ages of 15 and 24. Young people want to know what are the changes in the labor market, what the changes in the labor market demand are in terms of the competencies, skills gaps, while institutions want to ensure adequate and appropriate provision of training. Job seekers and public employment services want information on current labor market signals. Existing workers, schools, universities, public and private training programs want to find out the link between long-term strategies in enterprise development and skills needs assessment. This therefore calls for a holistic and logical approach to skills needs and anticipation and skills development. So today we are extremely excited to have reached this point of the launch of our first labor market survey. We are happy to have with us Mr. Ogusan Akildarim, consultant with us, who is working on the methodology and other aspects of the survey with the Statistics Department. We also look forward to his colleague, Ms. Maya Jukic, joining us in the not-too-distant future. She will be working more closely with us on the education side in the analysis of the data. The Ministry of Education must make optimal use of this opportunity to determine labor market needs in order to make targeted education, training, and skills development decisions which are needed to promote national and economic development. Thank you.
Adopting the protocol already established. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen here and those viewing on social platforms. The Anguilla Statistics Department is heartened by your presence here today. It is an indication of your support for the project and that we, in turn, believe it is on a firm foundation. The ASD, or Anguilla Statistics Department, has as its first component of its legal mandate to collect, compile, analyze, abstract, and publish statistical information relative to the commercial, industrial, economic, social, and general activities and conditions of people inhabiting Anguilla. In addition, and more importantly, is the second component of the mandate, as I may paraphrase, to collect with and collaborate with other government departments in the collection, computation, and publication of statistics. As a department, we are only too keenly aware of the pieces of data, or as we as statisticians term them, high-frequency indicators on which economic, social, and environmental policy and programs should hinge in order to make decisions in a sphere of transparency, objectivity, and on the basis of evidence. The department can be viewed as an enabler in a positive context. The outputs of the ASD's work should be used as the underpinning of work for ministries, departments, agencies, and even the private sector, business, and media. The National Statistical Agency, in this case, the Anguilla Statistics Department, is at the nucleus of any national statistical system. For many years, as you would have heard, the Anguilla Statistics Department has been making attempts to introduce a number of high-frequency indicators into its existing work program. However, constraints, both financial and human, often plague us, and the opportunities for the introduction of new data series fall by the wayside. A number of years ago, the opportunity presented itself through a lateral approach to the production of one of these indicators. The Education Planning Unit in the Ministry of Education reached out to the ASD, and their need for labor market and labor force data presented an opportunity for the ASD to institutionalize not only one, but two sets of high-frequency indicators, labor market and labor force. In past years, Anguilla has experienced irregular attempts to undertake either of these surveys. In September 1999, a labor force survey was conducted. However, it was not until 2001, with the 5th census, the population and housing census, when limited labor market and labor force data was actually produced. And note the term limited. Subsequently to the 1999 data and the 2001 data was a poverty assessment survey in 2002. And that as well provided us with, yet again, another limited set of data for which we deduce indicators such as employment rate, unemployment rate, among others. The most recent labor force data we can say was collected in that poverty survey and one following that in 2008 and 9. The dire need for a program concentrated solely on the direct production of labor market and labor force data, as the ILO has moved away from the deduction of these indicators through other surveys to purpose-built surveys, as this has become the best practice. Continuous measurement and monitoring of the health of labor market and labor force phenomena is critically important to any economy, as shocks, negative and or positive, can occur. Assessment of market fluctuations is needed to track possible cycles in business and determine industry trends in employment and unemployment. The statistical data and information obtained through the establishment of a labor force survey and a labor market survey will certainly paint a clearer picture of shifts in labor market and labor force phenomenon, and can only lead to enhancing the ability of policymakers to plan effectively for the future. In a perfect labor market, there are as many individuals as there are matching jobs for these individuals' skills and training. However, we are aware that perfect markets do not exist. There are many barriers that render a labor market imperfect. These barriers could include the lack of economically active population statistics, skills mismatch, and the lack of information or occupational segmentation. A labor force survey captures data about the labor market, mainly focusing on the labor force and supply side of the market. The main objective of these surveys are to quantify the legal working age population and determine 3 mutually exclusive groups: the employed, the unemployed, and the economically inactive. Those are persons seeking work. The labor force framework, as shown on the screen, was introduced as an international standard by the 6th International Conference of Labor Statisticians in 1947. It was revised by the 8th ICLS in 1954 to focus on job creation as an economic challenge rather than unemployment as a social challenge. By the 12th meeting of the ICLS in 1982, the second revision sought to include measurement of pressure on the labor market in terms of current supply of labor. That is, an integrated measure on unemployment and employment. Additionally, labor force statistics are used to monitor progress towards countries' decent work as an agenda in the SDGs. Research indicates that a specialized household survey is the ILO's recommendation for collecting labor force statistics. A household survey uses probability sampling, which produces a representative sample of households from the entire population. Since there is known probability of selection, this enhances the reliability of the data from households. Also, during a household survey, data collectors have direct access to respondents. A variety of questions can be posed to the respondent, and an estimate of the survey error, that is the quality of the data received, can be computed, which provides the data user with an understanding of the accuracy of the data estimates produced. That is why for certain areas we prefer to use a survey methodology than administrative data. Certainly, these benefits cannot be achieved by continuous reliance on workforce data, as I mentioned, from Social Security records or administrative records in other departments and ministries. A labor market survey, the reason we are here today, is a tool, a statistical tool that facilitates the collection of data and information about the needs and demands of the labor market, that is, the business community. This type of survey involves a systematic study of a variety of aspects of the labor market. For instance, current employment status, monetary expectations, intangible benefits like prerequisites, a demographic profile, the work environment, and personal suggestions, among other things. Labor statistics that emanate from this source include job vacancies, labor costs, enterprise ownership, safety, and health information. Such a survey is usually focused on the demand side, what it is businesses want, and seek to measure different aspects of work and jobs, as well as provide an insight into the economy. When used correctly, indicators derived from the data collected in this survey can be used to track and evaluate current employment trends in a country. Such is the focus of this afternoon's stakeholder sensitization session. The ASD's contribution to the project was in the design of the technical components as it relates to the requirements for the survey methodology. In short, we designed the terms of reference for the project. In addition, the department is scheduled to assist in the collection, collation, and analysis of the data for the labor market survey. Sessions were held with a focus group of stakeholders prior to today's session, which now allows you, a broader base of stakeholders, to provide your feedback from the information presented this afternoon. We request your continued participation and support as we seek to produce indicators for Anguilla to improve the labor market and subsequently the labor force. With the terms of reference prepared and approved, the European Union advertised the consultancy, and the firm Ramboll and Equinoccio was successful. The key consultant on the project is Mr. Ogusan Alkidirim, seated on my right, and he brings to the project a number of years of experience in statistics, labor force, and labor market work. Mr. Ogus, as we have come to refer to him as, understandably why, is a Turkish national who holds a Bachelor of Science in Statistics and a Master's in Actuarial Science. Without any further ado, I wish to present and welcome Mr. Ogus to the podium.
Adopting the protocol already established, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It's a great honor to be here amongst you. I came from far away, from Turkey, where a bridge for two continents, Asia and Europe. We have also a beautiful city, Istanbul. You may have heard about it. Not like Anguilla, but we have also good places because it's like heaven. I mean, I said many times to Mrs. Alain and Mrs. Reed that you are living in heaven, and I am really happy to be here amongst you. So, actually, ladies covered almost everything, so we can go. I would like to simplify a bit what we are doing here, what we did until now, and what is to be done in the future, near future soon. Together, of course, we need your support too much, so we are here together with all stakeholders, not only to launch our survey, but also to implement, also to disseminate results. I may not be here when you are using those results in policy making, but I will be an honor to be a salt in it. The time has come, actually. Hopefully we launch the survey soon. We plan to launch the next week or the mid-other week. Now I would like to give some information. About the project and outputs, and also the need for evidence of skill gaps and shortages, some of the part covered by ladies. But also I would like to mention about the content of the survey. The project is a tripartite project. You see here there are three actors. One is the European delegation, because this is funded by European Union. So they are contracting authority of this project. Whatever we spend, we need to get their approvals. So it may take some time because of this. But until now, I think we are quite successful to get things on the way. We are 2 experts in team, as Mrs. Alain mentioned. Myself and 1 other expert will come soon from Croatia. She is expert on vocational education training. Hopefully we will implement all the activities together to make the project successful. Of course, we are in very good collaboration with the Anguilla Statistics Department and Education Planning Unit. I would like to thanks to them too much. The project was kicked off in October. Actually, at the end, on the last day of September, we used October and November to agree on the methodology, project implementation methodology, not the exact methodology of the survey, closely with Mrs. Alain and Mrs. Reed together. And at the same time, we also conduct some stakeholder meeting with, I know some faces. We already met remotely through Zoom meetings. So I understood how the project owned by the Anguilla people and Anguilla government. So we designed the methodology accordingly. We now completed our design stage. Now we are about to launch the survey, as I said. We just wait some approvals from both EU delegation and Anguilla government to use some survey tools and also to get interviewers on board to implement the survey. Hopefully we will start soon and complete the survey in 3 or 2 weeks in a short while. Afterward, we process and analyze the data and be ready for dissemination, hopefully by 3rd of May. This is my target. Before I leave the island, I would like to present the results to you, at least summarized initial results about what we have collected from the employers. I'm sure full production of the statistics book will take time, but at least we will find some time to discuss the initial results together. Here on this slide, you see some outputs we need to produce through the project. Some of them technical outputs, just to monitor the project. But the most important output is the Anguilla Labour Market Survey, short report and detailed report, of course. This is the most important output of the project. Another, of course, there are other outputs. If we can provide some capacity building in the statistical office, statistics department, and also the education planning unit, that also would be good outcome we will get together. Here, although mentioned, I would like to mention about the labor market information. 4 or 5 years ago, we were together with 3 experts around. We tried to set up a labor market information system in CARICOM. We set up the system. It was a very good system on the platform with a good software, but unfortunately there was no data in it. We had the system, but without data. So what we did, actually, we tried to convince small island states to produce data. But of course, I'm aware of that the situation, especially at that time, this unprecedented time of COVID, it is tough, it is very difficult. Not only because we have limited resources in that kind of states, but also now we have challenges to collect data. Of course, we are trying to find some ways in close collaboration with Mrs. Aline. She is helping us a lot. Hopefully, we will use computer-assisted telephone interview for the survey, and we will mitigate this challenge, this risk, data collection risk. Of course, there are other problems now we are trying to sort out. So here you see there are two dimensions in the market, demand and supply, as in all markets. One side is buyer, another side is seller. What buyer is buy? The skills from the seller. What seller is sell is the skill of themselves. Whatever skill the seller has, buyer has to buy it, or they couldn't facilitate, they couldn't do their jobs. So here you see some other sub-dimensions. We will search in the survey. Here at the demand side, we try to find what industry needs more skills, or what occupation needs more skills, or what skills they need. Of course, under the shadow of profitability and productivity. Also, supply side, we will try to ask or understand from employers what kind of education or what kind of skills they intend to buy from sellers. Here, this is a very basic formula, actually. There can be, we can change the sides. We can put, instead of skill demand, skill supply, we can subtract, or we can put, we can subtract as is. But at the end, we will find skill mismatch. Here, there are also definitions, some definitions under skill mismatch. Either it should be a skill gap, or skill shortage, or skills underutilization and needed upskills. So we will try to find those for each occupation and for each industry. You see here, I just wanted to show you, there could be in two ways. Either skill demand can be greater than skill supply, or skill supply can be greater than skill demand. So at both cases, we have some negative effects, negative results. You see, if skill demand is greater than skill supply, then we will have open vacancies in establishments. Low capacity usage because of these open vacancies. Or weak quality production and service provision. Of course, at the end, we all will be dissatisfied customers if we are buying production or services from those businesses. And then in the end, we will have small economy. So, since demand is higher than supply, wages will go up. Of course, somebody who has skills will be happy, but most of them will be unhappy because we will get products or services with the higher prices. So then also, it will be another case, we will have more migrants workers here, while the citizens of Anguilla was sitting at their houses. If, on the contrary, if skill demand is less than skill supply, which means that we will have unemployment. Also, the brain drain will increase. I mean, younger population will go to other states because they will not find job here. There will be more import because there will be less production. And because of this, there will be higher inflation because you will buy most of the things from outside. And since the skill demand is less and the sellers will compete, they will sell themselves for the lower weights. So they will get smaller weights, and then, of course, they will have less purchasing power. And then again, small economy, and then dissatisfied people of Anguilla. So here you see economists work on that kind of things, you know. Sometimes, of course, those things could be advantage for some part. Maybe employers want wage should be lower. Or maybe sellers, of course, everyone else is working and we want higher salaries. So it means that for some cases, somebody will be happy, but not everybody. So the government try to set these equilibrium points. I mean, you see here, if quantity is higher, then the price is up. Or if quantity is lower, then the price is down, or vice versa. You see, for both sides. Here, this graphic shows. Of course, after we collect data, then the government will put all data in front of them, and they will work. How they will increase something or decrease something. So in order to do this, they need to set up some policies. So this is what we want as statisticians. I hope I clarified something you said. Here, hopefully later the government will work on it. What we want, actually, we don't want to decrease skill demand or skill supply. I mean, we don't want to decrease demand or supply. We want to increase them at the same time, simultaneously. So here you see, if skill demand is less than skill supply, then the government will promote entrepreneurship. Or they will put some subsidies, like decreasing tax rates or some other subsidies. Or they will implement or apply some other supports. If skill supply decrease or lower, then of course now what education planning is doing, they are trying to provide you, all people of Anguilla, quality education. Here TVET is working with us, thanks to FEL here. They would like to produce TVET policies. So, of course, the government will support lifelong learning. They will try to find some way to provide such opportunities to people of Anguilla. Again, government will put some employability programs. But first, they need to see the picture via our data. Here, of course, determining or having knowledge about skills or asking them to employers is also difficult. I'm not sure if you see, but I can read if you don't see the small text on the pictures. Here, you know, skills are changing. So what we always propose, the governments should target future skills. Actually, Mrs. Reed mentioned about future skills. It is better, but future skills should be targeted in the country to catch the world on time. Otherwise, the Anguilla will be behind of the other states. So here, you see, asking skills always difficult. Here, this is the joke from IKEA, job interview. I don't know if you heard about IKEA. It's a furniture industry, big furniture industry. So this is the recruiter and asking applicants to have a seat, to see his skills. Here, of course, it is sometimes also difficult to understand, you know. Here, maybe I can read here. The manager is asking something maybe this worker couldn't do. And the worker is responding him that, I said at the interview I was honest and hardworking. I never said I was competent. So, you see, the asking skills is very difficult understanding them. Here, this is from that weekend. I was looking for a barber shop. I attempted to 2 times. I don't know the region where I was coming, but I saw 2 barber shops, but 2 of them was closed. Then I came to center. I found one barber shop, and I went inside, and I thought I am so lucky because I find at least one barber shop. But then I understood that the boy who will cut my hair couldn't speak English. So he was Spanish. So he was from Dominica. So I tried to explain him what I want. But at least he was so clever. He showed me some pictures. Okay, see this, see this, see this. And I told him that, okay, I want American style. And then he showed me this place. Probably he asked me if I want bold, you know, that sides. I said no. No, but you know, it is also skill, soft skill. We need to communicate with the people well, to understand them, what they need and what we need to give them. So it is another issue. Here, this is also sometimes employers are expecting unrealistic skills. Also, you see, I will read here. The lady is telling applicants that we are looking for someone with the wisdom of 50 years old, the experience of a 40 years old, the drive of a 30 years old, and the pay scale of a 20 years old. So this is also, you know, so how difficult we ask skills or expectations. So, but we will try. We have prepared very good questions for employers here. I hope we will collect good. So who requires this information? The information needed by actually all people of Anguilla. Even students and their families should know what kind of skills their children need to have. It is important. So it means that all people of Anguilla is the stakeholder of this survey. But of course, top of this, I put here the Education Planning and Statistics Department. We are working together. Of course, TVET Council, Community College, ACOSI, and Hotel and Tourism Agency, and of course the Labor Department. I would like to also invite them for our meetings sometimes. They will be the main users of this data. So why do they need this information? Already explained by myself and my colleagues. I am skipping those slides not to spend more time. But here, the most important thing, what is to be done exactly? We will conduct an employer survey on skills to ask them what kind of skills they need in Anguilla, at least to sustain their businesses. So this is important. There will be many questions. I am telling many because the survey will take 15 to 30 minutes, depending on the size of establishment. Of course, it is impossible to talk to all employers in Anguilla, so we selected sample of 448 employees. We would like to access all of them, but we have a short time. We have challenges. At least we will call all of them. Hopefully we will access at least 320 of them to get their responses. So we need your support too much at this stage. We will collect data anonymously. We will not mention about any names or any determiners of the establishments. It should be totally confidential because this is the rule of statistics. The data should be collected confidentially, and the data should be published, and nobody should understand who give the information. And data, we will process and analyze data after we finalize the survey, and then we calculate indicators. Of course, as I said, we will disseminate the first initial data by 3rd of May. We will start, this is our target date, by 22nd of March. Perhaps we will start by pretest. Hopefully, we intend to finalize the survey by 16th of April. So we need your help to motivate employers for participation in the survey, because as I said, ultimate beneficiaries are people of Anguilla. So please disseminate news about the survey and motivate members as much as possible. We need to increase the response rate to make the data representative data for all Anguilla. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
At this point on your agenda, there should be a coffee break. But seeing that it was so interesting, we will go straight into a few questions and then we'll take the refreshments afterward. So if there are any questions, you can pose them and we will attempt to answer them from the head table. A mic is going to be coming around as well.
Thank you. It's Paulo Paes from Zemi Beach, the GM. I'd like to ask a question to the panel, to yourself. Similar studies and projects that you've done here in a region of Caribbean, if you've done, do you have any case studies of any success rates that you've ever achieved?
Before we respond, I'll let the permanent secretary take her leave. Please, this is the one for economic development. Take her leave. Any questions for her, we'll write them down and she'll respond to them at a future date. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It is a very good question, actually. In the region, no. I mean, in the region, what I know that Barbados, Jamaica, is conducting the survey for the supply side. And as far as I know, Guyana has some attempt to collect labor force data. But not too much states are collecting the data on demand side. So collecting data demand side is generally for production, not for skills or human resources. This is a new concept even in the world. European Union just started collecting data on skills through a demand survey. I think they started in 2015, just recently. Maybe 13 they piloted one. Of course, they ask some questions within the frame of the other surveys, but not exactly the skill survey. Employer skill survey, also United Kingdom. We also take base their surveys here, what we use. But I think it will be the first in the region, the survey, in terms of skill survey.
Okay, thank you. Hi there. I have another. I'm just very curious to know how you work. So once this data is collected, will you have any say or recommendations as to what will be the way forward based on the data? Because as you know, data is data, and you need somebody to interpret that data and then make decisions upon it. Do you provide that kind of consultancy as well?
Yeah, it is again a good question. Actually, this is the, the response is the aim of this meeting. And the project also aims this. So we are two experts. I am statistician. Of course, I try to interpret the data. But the thing is that the data also should be interpreted to the policy. It is also another side. So the other expert will help us for interpretation of data to policies. At least how we will use the data. I am talking on behalf of actually Education Planning Unit to make good policies. But this is unfortunately only one side. But another side is as Mrs. Aline mentioned, the supply side data will be coming next year via the population census. The Anguilla government, I don't know if she would like to explain more about population census. The other side, supply side, will come by this population census. And the government should be able to interpret those two surveys in one pot together. Because we are just hearing now voice of employers, not hearing the voice of population. So population will talk through population census. Of course, the government of Anguilla has some administrative data in their systems, but next year, hopefully, after this survey, more feasible policies will be produced.
I just wanted to add to that. After you have collated the data, will there be public consultation with stakeholders based on the interpretation of that data? So after it's interpreted by the statistics departments, government, etc., will that push for consultation with stakeholders, public consultation?
Yes. The short answer to that is yes. We want to bring the data back and kind of discuss it and show the meaning of it in English.
But also for not just the meaning in English, but what I'm saying for the public to be able, they may have ideas as well. You know, for instance, I just want to say something. For instance, so based on that information, when you gather data and you've realized that there is a lack of tourism, hospitality, education, right? So I may want to suggest that tourism and hospitality should be a mandatory course. I'm just giving an example in school, you know? So I'm saying, would we have that opportunity to sit in a room where we are able to brainstorm in terms of, you know, as stakeholders, to be able to share in the needs for organizations?
Yes, we can do that.
You can take it. Sorry, I didn't realize it was so loud. Yes, I think that's an option that can be looked at. I think that's a good way to involve the various stakeholders. So I don't see why that couldn't happen.
Last question, I promise. What are the timelines? So there's a kickoff start of collecting data, then interpret data, then the policy making, and then when is that actually going to affect both the demand and supply in a qualitative fashion?
I can answer only one part, only my part. The project will be ending by the end of May. I mean this project. So this project dedicated for data collection, and of course interpretation of data after we collect data. So this is the project. But your questions is very wide. I mean, so it's up to Anguilla government, also to our colleagues here, to sustain the data collected here to turn into the policy. But it will take time, of course. I mean, because as I said, the population census will hopefully be conducted later. And both sides should be seen by authorized people to make decision, to take decision. Meanwhile, I would like to also respond to your question. This is important so much. We have foreseen a workshop with stakeholders to validate data. I mean, of course, while we are presenting the results, initial results, it will be initial, not the final results. So we will discuss and validate with you the results. Maybe what we have covered from the survey, because of the sampling errors, might be wrong. So we will discuss all the results with you, and then we convince ourselves that what we have collected is true, is correct.
Okay, so as I mentioned, the labor market survey is the first step. So coming out of that, yes, we will have the official report from the consultant. Yes, you will have also the other consultant who would work with us in terms of analyzing the data and coming up with recommendations and policies in education. But the data will be here. There will be future surveys. There is always opportunity for discussion. I think I mentioned earlier in terms of all the different persons who would want to use the data. So obviously we have to find ways now to disseminate it to make sure that those who need it who have access. And know that you know that we're doing it, feel free to to request the data in whatever form, once we're able to provide it, then, it would be disseminated.
Just to go back on the question, I can officially say the census, which was due this year, will be conducted in 2022. Understandably, there have been some challenges. So the data that we would get from that for the labor force component would be delayed. But as in the presentation, the ILO is moving away from collecting labor force data in a census. So the other component to this labor market is the labor force, and we are hoping we get in on time to collect, well, I shouldn't say it, to be able to take opportunity of the funds from the EU again. So then we'll have a complete match. But going forward, we want to sync those two surveys into our work program so you get a continuous update of your labor market, the force and the supplies, the supply and demand side. So.
And finally, is this something, I mean, as we're doing the survey, we'll be able to, once you've gotten the knack of it and everything is in place, we'll be able, just like other statistics, to have annual stats for that sort of information, right?
That survey, we want to institutionalize twice a year. So it isn't a January, February, March survey. Twice a year at 2 points, a continuous rolling sample. Okay? So hopefully, for the labor force survey, we want to do it once annually and then quarterly because of the dynamism of the labor force.
Good afternoon. Quick question regarding, actually two, with the methodology. You mentioned it's telephone interview. Would that be solely with the employer's owners or HR managers, or is various different persons in the organization? That's one. And part B to that one, what information do you suggest employers to have readily available if it's solely a methodology of telephone conversations? And my second question is, what is the ability for this survey to capture the non-traditional demands in the market? Because it seems very formalized, but what happened to the other skills set in terms of the carpentry, plumbers? Would you be able to capture those persons whose profession is not really regulated? Those are my two questions.
Thank you very much. Let me start from the second question. Of course, we are not collecting technical part of skills. I don't know. I mean, this is so difficult because there are many occupations, not only carpenters or, maybe electricians, maybe mechanical stuff. So it is so difficult to grasp that kind of thing through one survey. Maybe it should be the way that after survey, there could be some, let's say, working groups or focus group discussions with each occupations which is important for the island. Then those skills can be collected from them through these focus group discussions. What was the first question? Can you repeat the first one, the question? Yeah, methodology, we used European Union employer survey, employer skills survey methodology we used. We will cover almost all of them. I mean, we selected 448 establishments out of 1,067, I think. 1,067. And we selected almost all employments with more than 3 employees. So it means that we will cover all of them. Only sampling selection was done for self-employed persons. We selected, unfortunately, maybe 1/3 of them. But from every sector, we covered almost all economic activities in the island. We used Social Security Board list. Yeah.
The sample frame, that's the list of persons was what we did is we compared it with what we have as a business register, and we used that. You understand? So if it was that you are not in our business register for purposes of national accounts, we couldn't sample from it, okay? Unfortunately. But we have done it that way to ensure that we can tell you about the quality of the estimates. It's a probability sample as opposed to just a convenience sample where you're just asking opinions, etc. Okay. Solely. The targeted person who would have this kind of data that we believe is the HR manager, the person who is hiring, and the manager, the person in whichever case where there is one employee or a working proprietor, it would have to be the working proprietor. If it is an establishment with those 3 and 4 sets of people, you would most find an officer who deals with the payroll, HR matters, etc.
I just wanted to add, with reference to your second question on the capturing the technical skills. And I mentioned in my presentation the whole concept of developing a skills, needs, and anticipation system. So the labor market survey is one aspect, but there are other areas, and I think you would have noted that the TVET coordinator is one of those persons who would have undergone that training as well. And there are other ways that we can use, such as the sector surveys, the Delphi method, to capture this information, focus groups. So as I said, this is a first step, and we intend to build on what we've done as we progress to improve in terms of the data and information that is available on the labor market. You can ask another one.
I think probably you'll be able to pick up those positions that normally not on the radar by interviewing the demand.
Yeah.
Because we all tell you.
Yes.
Electricians, carpenters, plumbers,
Exactly.
which is a fact. You know, normally in the industry we don't think about, the people who are on the front line, but the ones that are on the backstage are very, very important. And yes, and they don't really come up on the radar normally that you would have. But to be able to pick up that, I think, during our interview to demand.
Yeah, and in education, we would also want to pick up those emerging skills. In other words, they don't exist, but we are interested in what direction we need to focus in terms of what is coming. Yes, good.
But again, I go back to my perspective in terms of the timeline. What, from the government standpoint, what is the timeline in terms of the project from actually making it an actionable decision so that we have a real impact on what we're talking about, demand and supply? Because there's a huge disequilibrium. Sorry? All right, I'm sorry. Sorry, online guys. So, what is the milestones? We're talking about 3-year time span, 4 years. Also because on the private sector, whatever we decide today, we need to be somewhat aligned as to what's going to happen, in the country. We are already at our level at ZEMI, we are already doing a lot of restructuring at the moment because we know that when the world comes back to the new normal, there's going to be a new world, not the new normal. It's going to be the new world, and many things, as you said, there's going to be new positions that the hotels will hire, right? Because everything, the technology is advancing so fast that it's going to force us to change. And it's going to force the employers to create new competence in the companies that at the moment they don't exist yet. So
I think in answer to your question, and it's a difficult question to answer, but I think a lot of that has to do with what we find, what we uncover, because I'm sure that there'll be some sort of low-hanging fruit that we can address quite quickly, and then there's other things that aren't going to have impacts for years to come. So I think we have to look at the data and see what we have, and then determine, based on that data, what we can implement and how long it would take to do that.
well, I think the low-hanging fruit, and we all know the main engine of the economy in Anguilla is travel and tourism sector, and anything that evolves the tourism sector. And I know that community college, if you're here, you've been doing a great job trying to actually prepare some of the professionals, and we, in your hotels, we try to really, by giving them training, on-the-job training and off-the-job training, to make that happen. But I think that's a low-hanging fruit. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm from Europe. I participated in similar projects. I love Turkey as well. I like Istanbul as well. I know Istanbul or Turkey is a very, in terms of receptive for tourism, it's very big. And we in Europe, well, in the east part of Europe, always looking at what is Turkey doing and things like that. But it will be important really to determine at what it can be done that we already know that yes, statistics are important, but what can we do now today so that would have an impact, that low-hanging fruit, and create a consequence. I'm a firm believer that we need a hotel school, maybe cap on what the community college is already doing and all the efforts that they've been doing and getting people from outside to train our team. We need something more structural, something that it really prepares the professionals that the industry so much needs. Cooks, waiters, waitresses, bartenders. We find at ZEMI that housekeeping is in crisis. The average age of our housekeepers is very high. They're going to retire soon. And we've been struggling to find young people. Here is a low-hanging fruit that we need that urgently. Again, how to motivate the students or teenagers that are now at school, how to encourage them to go to the hotel industry. I think majority of them come to our industry by accident. They have nothing to do. Okay, it's a good thing to go and go to reception or serve at the bar and what have you. This needs to be more structural. Why? Because that's the main economic activity of the country. If you don't really take this serious, I mean, we have a medical school. That's great. Where is the hotel school? The main activity industry is the hotel industry. Is the tourism industry, and we need to breathe, talk, dream, speak tourism. Okay, and I think this is what, and we hear, the private sector we hear, and I've been talking all the time about a hotel school. Or let's call it a hotel academy. You need to be a cadet, because it's a lot of discipline in there. You need to have a passion to enter into this industry. Otherwise, it does not work. People are just, okay, we need a job to pay, the bills at the end of the day, but you can develop that skill set. So I think it's food for thought to really strategize in maybe it's not this mandate, maybe it's going to take about 8 years. But I think that if there is a lot of funds, or either from the European community or any other countries like in Britain, this is something that's structural, should have already happened. And yes, we're talking about many other improvements like the airport, infrastructures and what have you, but the software, it is the human factor, and we need to really create it. Unfortunately, we have to import that skills from outside. Which if we had here, there'd be no need. Okay, that's my little input. Thank you.
Okay, we are just a bit over 3:03, but any other questions, queries, just before, yes, go ahead.
Hello, hi.
Dr. Williams?
Yes, hi. If I can address, you were asking about the whole issue of training, but we are not doing it in coordination, but currently there's a consultancy to bring in a group of persons from Barbados Hotel School to look at how we can actually structure that. So this information will be coming forth, etc. So that is actually in the works already. The money has been allocated for it, and it actually should begin in the next month to 2 months. So I want you to know that that information is on the way. Okay.
I just wanted to say really briefly then, in relation to what you were saying in terms of timelines and action to be taken, the results of the Anguilla Labour Market Survey will have some actionable recommendations, I presume. As the PS said, some will be immediately actionable, but in terms of what happens in education, a lot of it depends on the flexibility of the staff, the training, the teachers to be able to fill the gap themselves. So we have to find out whether or not the ones who are delivering the skills that we identified have the tools to deliver it to the students. And when we identify where they do have them or they don't have them, I think that process will then determine a bit of the timeline issues in terms of action to when the industry will see persons with specific skills or the skills that they've identified coming into the labor market.
Go ahead. Any more burning statement? Okay, go ahead. Last? Yeah. Okay. If you want to say, if there aren't any more questions or comments, I want to thank you all for coming this afternoon. And I'll pass you on to Dr. Lake, who would officially do that, and then there are refreshments outside. I'm so happy to see so many people at an event by the department that it moves me.
Good afternoon, everybody. You've heard from all the other speakers. I don't have to convince you of the merit and the value of this labor market survey. I am very happy, though, that the Ministry of Education is able to take advantage of this really important opportunity. It's clear we're going to get some very useful information from it. Sound statistics for sustainable development is the Anguilla Statistics Department tagline. And it's with that vein, that I welcome the labor market survey. The survey will inform much of the ministry's work and will assist in forward planning. And you've heard the ways how, so I'm not going to go into that again. But I do want to thank you all for coming out. It's clear that there's an interest in this information and that it will be useful not just to the ministry, but to all of our stakeholders. And I wanted to thank our consultant and our education service planner and our chief statistician and all the people who have worked from behind to make this happen. As I said before, we do plan to use this opportunity to make some very clear, actionable points, because I think that's, in the long run, what people want to see. So you will be hearing more about this survey, and we do, of course, need you to cooperate when you're contacted, and I'm sure you will. So thank you very much for your interest and for being here. And with that, I welcome you to some refreshments.